Okay, so let's discuss this Cisco Firepower. So, what is Cisco Firepower? And this is also called FTD. Okay, so let's discuss about this. So, Cisco Firepower is nothing but it is a firewall, right? Which used to filter the traffic, and based on traffic filtering, it used to protect the network. If I talk about Cisco Firepower firewall, so basically this is the enhanced version of Cisco ASA, right? And Firepower has all the capability which is required for the next generation firewall. So you can say that the Firepower is the next generation firewall. Okay. So earlier we have a Cisco ASA. Okay. Cisco ASA was, having some limited capability in terms of next generation firewall. So what Cisco did, Cisco, uh, you know, Cisco introduced new firewall software, which is called FTD, Firepower Threat Defense. And they have created a separate appliances as well, right? For Cisco Firepower. Also, they have gave the capability to the existing customer who is using Cisco ASA. They can install the Firepower on the Cisco ASA also. So,
Sir, can you come again?
yeah, sure. So as I mentioned that Cisco ASA is the old firewall from the Cisco, right? This Cisco ASA has not capability of the next generation firewall. If I talk about next generation firewall, so next generation firewall has a multiple capability. Next generation firewall can do the sandboxing. Next generation firewall can filter the traffic based on the application. Next generation firewall would be able to do the advanced threat detection or advanced threat protection. So, and it can work on, based on zones. So all those capabilities Cisco ASA does not have. And that's why Cisco came with the new solution, which is called Firepower uh, software. So they have introduced new firewall, which is a Firepower. In this Firepower, they have put all the next generation firewall capabilities. Okay, so so that it can be competitive in the market. Now, if I talk about Cisco Firepower, so it has a dedicated appliance as well as you can install the Cisco Firepower software on the ASA as well. Okay. So I would talk about ASA firewall. So in ASA, if I talk about hardware, so ASA like 5500 series of the ASA. This is very famous. 5500 series. In the 55 we have 5510, 5520, 5525. So in this series we have a different appliances. So in Cisco ASA 5510 we have, ASA 5520 we have, ASA 5525 we have. So all these series we have. In this series, whichever series have the X capabilities, okay, those X capabilities series can be on those X capability series, you can install the Firepower. There you can install the Firepower. So on the top of ASA, if your ASA platform is supporting X, so on the top of that ASA, you can install the FTD, Firepower Threat Defense. You can install this software. And when you install this software on the top of ASA, this ASA would become next generation firewall because its a software has been upgraded with the FTD and this is supporting next generation. If I talk about next generation, so in the next generation, what it is supporting, how next generation firewall is different than traditional. In next generation firewall, it is supporting application ID. So application ID means it is supporting application identification. Now I would tell you what is application identification. So let's say there is a system which is behind the firewall and this is generating the traffic over the internet and it is connected to ASA. Now this system would be using multiple application and based on the multiple application it is generating the traffic. This system generating the traffic using browser as well. This system have a Zoom install. So this system generating the traffic to the internet using Zoom as well. This system has a Teams install. So this system is generating the traffic using to the Teams as well. When it is generating the traffic using browser, it is using 443 port number. When it is generating traffic using Zoom, it is also using 443 number and some other port. In Teams, it is using 443 number and some other ports. So if you see the port wise, port is the same for all these application, but the application behavior would be different. When you would be sending traffic using browser, the behavior of your traffic would be different. When you sending traffic using Zoom, the behavior of your traffic system traffic would be different. So if the firewall has a capability for application identification, the firewall would be able to identify that using which application the user is generating traffic, though their port number is same, right? So it would be able to identify that traffic is being generated using browser or Teams or Zoom or any other application. Let's say Outlook, any other application. Okay. So when this traffic is being generated, firewall is able to identify the application that using which application user is generating the traffic. And once application get identified on the firewall, you can apply, granular control. What is the granular control? Each application has different functionality. Like if I talk about browser, so using browser, what you can do? You can get the data and you can post the data, right? All these things you can do using browser. So you can retrieve some data from the website and you can post some data on the website, right? So if you just want to allow read only permission to the user, yes, that's possible. If you just because now it is able to identify that what it can it can be done. So if you just want to do read only permission, for example, a website can be read by the user, but user cannot put any data on the website. Yes, that is possible. You can just apply the get principle there. Post principle you can deny. Similarly, if you are sending the data using Zoom, so in the Zoom you have multiple capability. Using Zoom application, you can do screen sharing, you can do whiteboard sharing, You can do the voice call, you can do the video call, you can do the file sharing, all these stuffs you can do. But let's say you just want to control that user should not be able to share whiteboard or screen sharing. User should be able to do the uh, video and voice call, but should not be able to share the file, should not be able to send the chat. All this is functionality you want to disable, and some of the functionality you just want to enable. Yes, that is that you can control using the application ID identification, right? So if it would be only ASA, you won't be able to control all these things. But this is firepower now. It's next generation firewall. In next generation firewall, we have capability this. Apart from this, next generation firewall support sandboxing. In Cisco Firewall, it is known as a ATP, Advanced Threat Protection. This is another feature of the next generation firewall. This is equivalent to sandboxing. Okay, so what happened in the sandboxing? If there is a new threat is coming, I mean, if there is traffic is coming through the internet, and for that traffic, there is no antivirus signature available, there is no anti-spyware signature available, there is no IPS signature available, then what firewall able to do? Firewall would be able to send that traffic for further analysis to the ATP module. In the ATP module, your file is going to be extracted, behavior is going to be noted. If the behavior seems malicious, the firewall would be able to block that traffic. If behavior seems to be okay, the firewall is going to allow the traffic. So before, replicating that traffic to the actual network, it used to evaluate this traffic with the sandbox, which is known as a ATP. So this is the feature of next generation firewall. So all these feature is only possible when you have a firepower installed on the top of ASA. Sometimes you just want to retire these ASA hardware, right? Some organization want to retire these ASA hardware. They don't want to use the existing ASA hardware because these hardware do not have that much capability as we have a dedicated appliance of the Cisco Firepower, right? So what the Firepower does, I mean what the Cisco does, you can install the Firepower on the top of ASA, which is supporting X series, or you can purchase the firepower as a hardware appliances, or you can purchase the firepower as a software appliance. If I talk about hardware appliance, so Cisco Firepower is coming like 4200 FTD. 4200 appliance is a hardware appliance. So yes, you can purchase this as a hardware appliance also, and you can purchase this as a software appliances. So you can purchase the virtual machine also, which you can deploy on the top of KVM, a hypervisor, or you can deploy this on the VMware. This is supporting all those platforms. KVM is for Linux. Hypervisor you can install on the Windows, and this uh, virtual machine VMware, you know that on the top of ESXi or any Windows workstation, you can install this software. So it is supporting software appliances as well, and it is supporting hardware appliances as well. Organization do prefer the hardware appliances. They have a different series of the hardware. 4200 series is very famous. So as I mentioned, these Cisco Firepower can come as a dedicated appliance. It is supporting next generation firewall feature, and you can manage this firewall centrally. So nowadays, what happened? I would tell you. Nowadays, firewall, if you have multiple firewall in different data center or in the same data center, let's say you have four firewall, FW1, FW2, FW3, FW4. You have total four firewall and you want to manage them, right? So how you can manage? You can manage individually. For example, you can log in on the firewall one, you can create the rule. You can log in on firewall two, you can create the rule, delete the rule, look the traffic, all those things you can do. As a individually, you can manage firewall, but like any other firewall vendor, like we have Palo Alto, we have FortiGate, we have a Checkpoint. All those vendor is supporting centralized management. Centralized management means there is a management device from where user can log in. Let's say this is a manager, and using this manager, you just want to manage all these firewall. You don't want to log in on each individual firewall, but on the manager. From here, you can create a respective policy and you can push the respective policy to the firewall. So Cisco Firepower is also supporting centralized management. In Cisco Firepower case, this manager is called FMC, Firepower Management Center. And then you can integrate the firewall with this FMC. This firewall is called FTD. FTD. So all the FTD you can manage through FMC. So you can see this FTD is having a data plane, and this is FMC can be used as a management plane. Right. That means you can manage your traffic through FMC. Sorry, you can manage your firewall through FMC. Okay. So let's say you have a admin user, admin users who manage the firewalls, and to them you just want to provide the access. So you don't need to go on each firewall and create their account. You can create their account on FMC. Let's say Amar is the admin user. Okay. Or Bob is the admin user, or any user we have, we can create their account in the FMC. And once we create the account in the FMC, they can access all these firewall. And if I need to remove them, I can remove them through FMC. So I don't need to create on account on each individual firewall. No, I can create the account on FMC, and through from there we can manage. So this is supporting centralized management. Now you might ask the question, what if you don't want to purchase the FMC, because FMC is also FMC coming as a hardware. This centralized plane, management plane, is coming as a hardware. So FMC has a hardware like FMC 1001. This is what? This is a hardware device. Or this FMC you can purchase as software also. Okay. Which you can install into the VM machine, virtual machine. So that is also possible. But the question is, let's say you don't have FMC and now you just want to manage the firewall. Let's say there is a small organization which is having one firewall only, single firewall they have, and they don't want to purchase the FMC, because if you go purchase FMC, around $2,000, $3,000 is the cost of this FMC hardware device. So if you have a single firewall, only, one firewall only in your organization. You just want to manage this firewall. Whether this firewall can be managed individually, yes. So this firewall can be managed individually. You don't require FMC to push the configuration for single firewall. In Firepower, they have something called um, FDM, Firepower Device Manager. So this FDM is what? There are two part in the firewall. One is known as a FTD, another is called FDM. So if you purchase the Firepower device, let's say you have purchased 4200 of Firewall series. So in that there would be two things. There would be FTD and there would be FDM. FDM is a management console. Using the FDM, what you can take, you can do the management. You can access the firewall using FDM, and then you can see the policy, manage the policy. And this FTD is a data plane. This is a data plane. So this data plane decide that what data should be allowed and what data should not be allowed. So let's say there is a system who just want to communicate to another system, A to B. How the traffic would go? Traffic would go to FTD, and through FTD it is going to travel through this B system. On the through the FDM, you are going to create a policy that what traffic would be allowed and what traffic not be allowed. And through the FDM, you are going to push that policy to the FTD. So if you have a single firewall, you can manage this using FDM. And if you have multiple firewall, so instead of FDM, you can tell to this FDM, don't use local management, use a remote management. So that firewall can be integrated to the remote as well. So through the when you integrate your firewall through the remote, you can push the policy through the FMC. You can log in the FMC and you can create the policy. You can tell that FDM get the policy from FMC and push to the FTD. So that is also possible. So using, I mean, in the Firepower is supporting centralized management. Like in Palo Alto, we have Panorama. In Palo Alto, we have Panorama. In Checkpoint, we have a Smart Manager. Okay. In in FortiGate, FMG, which is known as a FortiGate Manager, FMG. Same thing in a Firepower, we have a FMC. So this is supporting centralized management.
So you mean to say like, where FDM can be integrated with the FMC, correct now, sir?
Yes, this FDM can be integrated with the FMC.
So that
Correct.
it can fetch the policy from FMC, so that from FDM we can push it to the F.
Yeah, I mean from FMC itself, you can push the policy to the FTD. So if you say your
So
firewall is
so
not
so
local managed, there is an
okay.
option local managed and remote managed.
Okay.
So during the installation itself, it is going to ask your manager is local. So if you say yes, local, then you can use the FDM. If you say no, my manager is not local, it is remote managed, so you can push the policy through FMC.
Uh, okay. So some part of time I managed my firewall with FDM, locally managed, but later point of time I want to manage it using FMC. So in that case, there can be, integration happens to be
Yeah,
happened,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Integration can be happen at any time.
But once after it, it can be managed only with FMC, correct?
Correct. I mean, good
Okay.
to manage through FMC because FMC has a centralized policy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
But
in the,
even if it is managed with FMC also, so admin login into
yeah,
let.
admin can log in into the firewall.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Now I'm talking about the next part. So this firepower is supporting IPS. Okay. ASA have also IPS and firepower has also IPS. Now the in the ASA, when you are using the ASA, in ASA you can use a software as a IPS and you can use hardware as a IPS. So in ASA there was a module which is known as a IPS module itself. This it was coming as a card. There was IPS card. You used to insert that IPS card into the ASA firewall, and then your firewall would be supporting the IPS. Now, if you are using firepower, in the firepower, you don't need to add additional any hardware card as a IPS. In Cisco firepower, the IPS is a built-in feature. This is a built-in feature. And what they have did, there was a famous software IPS which was Snort. This is not IPS they have included into the FTD. So this FTD, on the top of FTD, they have deployed this IPS, which is not IPS. And now IPS is the default feature of this Cisco Firepower. Okay. So if you see the Snort IPS, this was a third party IPS earlier. Cisco has purchased them. Cisco has modified the Snort IPS and they have built in that IPS on the top of FTD. So now FTD is supporting the IPS. Now, if I talk about Snort IPS, this was a very famous IPS system. Okay. And this IPS, when Cisco have built in this IPS into their firepower, now firepower is most protective IPS system now. This is supporting the IPS. Now, if I talk about IPS, what is the work of IPS? You might be knowing or might not be knowing. So there are two terms. One is called IPS and other is called I IPS intrusion prevention system, IDS. So there are two terms, IDS and IPS. Let me just talk about these two. Now, I would talk about intrusion, right? What is the intrusion? So let's understand intrusion first. So let's say I have a firewall over here. This is my firewall. And this firewall is doing a traffic filtering. So we are allowing some traffic or we are denying some traffic through the firewall. So in my firewall, we have one zone which is called DMZ zone. And in the DMZ zone, let's say we have put the web server. We have a web server in the DMZ zone. And this web server is working on port number 443. This web server got IP 172.16.0.10. Let's say this is my web server IP. And uh, I have exposed this web server over the internet. So let's say this web server is www.test.com. This web application is running. Okay. And user is trying to access this web server over the internet for their task. So this firewall is connected to another interface of firewall is connected over the internet. And on the firewall, you have done the netting and you have exposed this web server outside. So web server has two IP. One, it's private IP. This is a private IP. And you have netted this web server with this IP 100.0.0.10. Let's say this is a netted IP. You have done the net over here. So this web server has a public IP. So this is a public IP of the web server. When user is trying to browse www.test.net, this IP is being resolved, right? I mean, DNS query is going to be resolved. And then user is hitting this IP and they are going to be netted on the firewall. So on the firewall, what you have done, you have allowed the traffic. Source is any and destination is, this is a source so that anybody can access your web server. Destination is your web server public IP 100.0.0.10, and you have allowed the traffic on the port number 443 or port number 80. 80 and 443 you have allowed for this web server. People around the world would be able to access your web server on port number 443 or port number 80. Everybody would be able to access it. They would type www.test.net and where the web page is going to be open on their system. These are the legitimate people. They are legitimate people. But you could have attacker as well. You could have attacker. Let's say this is attacker who just don't want to browse the website for its purpose. It want to do the scanning. Post the scanning, it want to send the exploit, etc. When I say exploit, that means they are sending some malicious payload to hack this web server. Now, how IPS or IDS is working. So when this system attacker is sending the malicious payload on this web server, and they would be sending that malicious payload on 443, your firewall have a signature. So in the firewall, what they have, they are not only checking your allowed rule, but they are, if you have enable IPS feature or IDS feature, okay, it is looking the signature as well. In the signature, it is looking that what type of data is being passed to this web server, to the web server or through the web server. So in the firepower, we have the IPS signature available. They have a database. Okay. So in this database, they have the IPS signature is available. So whenever any traffic is being passed, the firewall is going to look that whether that traffic is matching to these signatures. If the traffic is matching to the signature, so based on your policy, whether you have selected as a IPS or IDS, it is going to take the action. So let's say you have the signature database. In the signature database, this attacker is trying to exploit SMB vulnerability. So for SMB vulnerability, already signature is there. Whenever this is sending the exploit for SMB vulnerability, what happened? The firewall is going to look into its signature database. It found that, okay, this traffic pattern matched to SMB. It is going to take the action. Action could be deny. If you are using IPS, intrusion prevention system, if someone is trying to do intrusion, okay, then IPS is going to prevent against. If you have enabled the in the alert mode only. This is alert mode. So traffic is going to be passed, but it is going to trigger the alert that the malicious traffic has been passed to the server. Alert is going to be triggered there. But if you enabled IPS, it is on deny mode. Traffic is going to be denied. Malicious traffic is going to be denied. Right? So that's how IPS works. It is used to block the malicious traffic which is used to exploit any vulnerability. So as I mentioned, let's say this web server was running on a IIS platform. If the IIS platform is vulnerable, your IPS is going to protect the web server against the vulnerability. Okay, so that's how it works. Any question?
Sir, generally, IPS or IDS and all, right, sir? Frequently, we cannot, you know, get into this module for frequent configuration changes. So in real time, I'm talking about. So it is kind of, the default profile. If in case they enabled it, then it can work along with what configuration applicable to the default profiles. Correct. We cannot frequently getting login into this IPS and do the frequent configuration changes, right? And one more thing, if it is deny, then how can we audit, like, so and so traffic has been denied and so and so traffic has been allowed? That also we cannot frequently audit as a working as a firewall administrator in real
Yeah,
time.
sure. So there are some criticality, I would say. If criticality is high or critical, severity, I would say there are different severity: critical, high, medium, and low, let's say. So we have those type of criticality. Usually any critical findings, we use to critical, high, medium findings, we use to block them. Okay. But sometimes your legitimate traffic can also be blocked. So for legitimate if the legitimate traffic is being blocked, you can put the exceptions. So what is the best way to apply this IPS in the production? First, you apply the IPS, enable the IPS into the alert mode, You watch the signature, traffic. You can see what is my legitimate traffic and what is not legitimate traffic. And post that you can, enable these criticality into the block mode. So I would take example, let's say you just want to apply the IPS, right, in your firewall. So you can say that you have a 10.0.0.0 subnet /8. You have a 72 subnet /16, or you have 192 subnet. You can say that if any traffic is coming to this subnet from the outside, okay, by default it would be on alert mode. And at that time, you can see that what is the non-legitimate traffic is coming. So you would be able to see that the attacker is trying to send so many malicious script to all these web servers or whatever the servers you would have exposed over the internet. Once you see that they are sending the critical, they are sending the high or medium type of exploits, okay, you can put them into the block mode. If you feel like there is any valid traffic, but that is considering as a medium or high severity, for that you can create exception.
Understood,
So
Daniel.
frequently, I mean, frequently you won't be able to, configure this IPS IDS, but based on the traffic analysis, you used to enable or disable the IPS into the block mode or into the alert mode, right? So that's how it works.
So if in case all my configurations are proper, yet the traffic is blocked or denied by IPS, so can we able to find it in logs, sir? Like
Yeah,
so
yeah.
IPS
In the
based.
log, you should be able to find.
Okay.
Yeah,
So so if it is a legitimate traffic, we can tune it to allow it with exceptions. Correct.
yeah, allowed with the exception, correct.
Okay. Got it, sir. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Now moving to next, and next we are going to talk about our course, what we are going to cover here, or what we discussed the things. We will discuss the introduction. We will discuss the deployment. We would discuss the packet processing and the policies. We will discuss the object. Okay. We would discuss the NAT, different type of NAT. Okay. After that, we are going to discuss the filter policy. We are going to discuss the access policy. We are going to discuss the security intelligence. Okay. We are going to discuss access control policy, IPS policy, VPN, right? All these stuffs we are going to discuss. Now, I would talk about this hardware device. This is the Cisco Firepower 200 series of the hardware. And let's discuss this hardware so that later we can go to the lab. So, as I mentioned that Cisco Firepower is coming as a hardware also. So when you purchase any hardware, it is going to take some space into the your data center. So usually Cisco Firepower, the data in the data center, the space it is going to take, usually it is going to take one RU space, one RU and two RU space it is going to take. Some of the devices one RU, some of the devices are two RU. RU means rack unit. Okay, so this is a very thin device and this is going to take minimum space, one RU. Apart from this, in this Cisco Firepower, you would have a different, interfaces, different type of interfaces. So you would have a network module which would be supporting 8x 10 gig SFP module, and it is also supporting fail to wire feature in the future. So these are the fixed one. These are the fixed interfaces. Okay. So these interfaces you can use to connect to your inside, outside, DMZ, VPN, different type of network you can connect to these interfaces. Okay, so let's say you just want to connect inside, so you can connect. You can use this interfaces, whatever it would be. Let's say this is gig 0/10 2. So with gig 0/2, you can connect the inside switch. And with the inside switch, you have further system are connected. This is outside interface. Through outside interface, you can connect a router. And through router, internet is connected. So now let's say user want to access internet. They would be sending the traffic to this inside interface. And through this outside interface, traffic is going to routes towards the internet. But you need to do the policy configuration as well. So policy configuration, to access the firewall, we have a dedicated interface. This is known as a management interface. This management interface, this is used to take the console of your firewall. So you can take GUI console through this, or you can take CLI console to this. interface. So let's say management interface got some IP like 10.0.0.1. So you can type on the browser http s colon slash slash 10.0.0.1, and as soon as you type this, it is showing you GUI screen where you can type username admin and the password admin123. You can log in this firewall, and post that login, you can configure the interfaces, you can configure the policy, etc. Sometime this interface, let's say this interface do not have any IP, and now you need to access the firewall. So you have another option, the console cable. This is a console cable. This console cable you can connect to your laptop through USB port, and you can use any terminal program like putty. Through this putty, you can access the firewall, but you would be able to access only CLI, not GUI. Here, using management, you can use CLI, GUI both. If you use a browser and then IP address of your firewall, that's a GUI. And if you use putty and type this IP, that would be CLI. But using a terminal, you can only access, using this console port, you can only access CLI. And through CLI, you can assign IP. So there you need to run the commands for this firepower configuration. So these two interface can be used to access the firewall. And rest of the interface is going to use as a data plane. But if these interface you want to access the firewall on these interface, yes, you can do that. So it can act as a data plane, these interfaces, and they can also act as a management plane. You can access the firewall. So if you enable HTTPS on this interface, what happen? You can access the firewall. So these are the fixed interface that is going to be you participate in the data plane. And this is SFP. Okay. What is SFP? I think you already knows. If not, then let me tell you. So SFP is this small form pluggable module. On this SFP, you can, this is a pluggable module. So on this SFP, what you can do, you can put your pluggable interface. And when I say pluggable interface, so either you can use a fiber optical interface, or you can use a, you know, gigabit interface, which is copper based. So this is SFP. So let's say you required 1 gig, speed interface, which is copper based. So what you can do, you can put the Ethernet port there. Okay. If you required fiber optical port, you can put the fiber optical based SFP. So that's also possible. Okay, so these are the SFP based. Now, here you can see there are some indication. So you can see over here that these are the LED. If power on, interface is on, interface LED is itself is on the interface itself. So power LED is there, hard drive LED is there, right? If there is any error coming, that is there. And this is USB port. So if you want to, reimage your firewall through this USB, you can, reinstall the your firepower software on the storage, which is a kind of SSD storage. So it it has a slot, this slot, this slot. Their SSD drive is there, right? Dual SSD drive. On that storage, you can install the operating system. So FTD has a operating system like FTD 6.3, 7.0. These are the FTD operating system. So you can install over here on these hard drive, right? Then we have a further module. This is also network module. You can use them. Like you use this network module, you can use this network module as well. So that's a hardware device. Now moving to next, and I'm going to talk about our lab. So let's discuss our lab. In this lab, we have a firepower. These are the dedicated firepower device. These are the FTD. This is FTD. It can be managed via FDM, or you can manage them using FMC. So if you want to manage both FTD as FMC, so you can use this device, right? And we have a Cisco ASA. On this top of the ASA, we can deploy FTD later. Okay. So we would see that how this ASA is going to, on this ASA, how you can deploy the FTD. Right. Behind the ASA, we have a Linux device. This Linux device can be used as a source. Wherever this want to connect, it can connect through the ASA firewall. Let's say this Linux machine want to communicate to this Windows system. So on this Windows system, let's say we have an IP 192.168.1.10. And this device got IP, let's say 172.16.1.10. It would be sending the traffic here. And through gig interface, it would be reaching to this system. Right? Similarly, we can use this Windows system for two purpose. One interface we can use 10.0.0.10. This interface can be used for the management plane access. And the other interface can be used for the data plane. So if you want to access any device, for example, FMC, let's say got IP 10.0.0.100. ASA got the IP, let's say we have a management interface on this one. Let's say Ethernet 0 is the management. 10.0.0.1, 10.0.0.2. So if you want to access any of them, you would be accessing these devices using this management interface. But let's say you have another interface, these interfaces. Let's say this got IP 192.168.1.1 and this got 192.168.1.2. So now let's say you have some router, which is external router. Let's say this is 100.0.0.10. And you just want to test the traffic that using the firewall FTD, that router would be accessible. Yes, that is also possible. You can route the traffic like this. User would be going to the firewall interface, and through the firewall interface, it is going to use the another interface, then reaching to this router. So that is also possible. So in today's lab, what we are going to do, we are going to access one of the firewall. Okay. And we are going to see that what all the options we have in the firewall, right? So let me just access this firewall, first firewall. So what I would do, I would assign one IP to this system 10.0.0.10, and then I would assign one IP to this system 10.0.0.1, and I would try to access this firewall using HTTP, HTTPS protocol. And I would show you some options there in the FDM. So let's go and let's access this firepower. Not sure what happened. Okay. Whatever device is not required, I'm going to turn off them. For example, this Windows server is not required. Okay, so now I would access my firewall, this firewall, and I would try to see the Windows server is not required. So instead of Windows server, I would access this Windows machine. So I have Windows machine. I have this firepower. This is first firewall. I can let me just rename this. This is FTD1 and this is FTD2. Okay. Okay, so let's access it. So I'm on Windows system. First of all, on Windows system, I'm going to assign an IP. Ten dot zero dot zero dot 10 255.255.0. This is to access management interface of any firewall or any devices. And then we have a database testing, data plane testing. 192.168.2.10. 2.1 is IP of my firewall. Okay. So I am on the firepower. This is the firepower device, FTD device. Let's see. I think we had configured this firewall earlier. So let me show you if we have already configuration there or not. So let me just try to log in. Admin test @123. I think we have a pre-configuration there. And if I run the command show network, I should be able to see the management IP. So 10.0.0.1 is the management IP which is already assigned. So this is assigned. Okay, I'm going to show you that how the firewall console looks like. So let's access the firewall console. Admin test @ 123. So whenever you would receiving your firewall from the Cisco, so on this firewall by default there is an IP assigned. I think it is 192.168.1.145. That is our default IP. Okay, I would show you default IP of Cisco Firepower. 45.45. That's a default IP, right? When you are receiving the firewall, a hardware device, on that hardware device to the management interface, by default an IP assigned 192.168.45.45. So what you usually used to do, you used to access this firewall, you connect that management to the laptop on the Ethernet port. And on your laptop, you would be assigning IP 192.168.45 dot something, like one you can assign. And then you used to type https colon slash slash 192.168.45.45. As soon as you type, you would be able to access it. And post that, you can log in into the firewall. Default username is admin, and the password is admin123. You can log in the firewall, or admin. You can log in into the firewall and then you can change the IP. So instead of that, you just want to use 10.0.0.1, you can change the IP /24, right? In our case, I had already one IP assigned to this firewall, and that's why I'm able to access the console. So you can see here in the console, this is the FDM basically. Right now you have accessed the FDM, Firepower Device Manager. So this is the FDM console. This is the FDM basically. So there you can see the device summary. You can see that what is the model. So Cisco Firepower Threat Defense for KBM. That this firewall is a virtual firewall. KBM is a Linux based virtualization. So this is a virtual firewall. If it would have a physical firewall, so there you would be able to see your firewall model number, 4200 series, 2200, 2100, something like that. Then this is the software. This software is the FTD version. So right now this machine is on FTD 6.3. Okay. This is a vulnerability database. This is the IPS database, right? That is 299. So they have the IPS databases. So right now you are on 299 IPS database. Last rule update, you can see that last rule update for this firewall was 2018. This was the last rule update. This is the last data update. So basically what happened, this 2.6.3, this software, when the virtual machine was downloaded. Post that, the this firewall never been updated. Okay, so that's why you can see it's the last rule update is the 2018. High availability, not configure. What is currently configured that it is showing. Ethernet 0/1 is configure. Okay, which is gigabit Ethernet. So this is supporting 1 gig bandwidth.
Sir,
So
why rule update it is showing 2018, sir? So can
yeah, the rule is updated at 2018. I mean, this software was released at 2018, and post that, whatever the default configuration was in the software, only those configurations are there. None after that, you know, this device was never been updated. So this came with the default database, default rule set.
got it, sir.
Yeah. So now I'm talking about the interface. So this is showing you some GUI connectivity, and using this you can be able to identify that how it is connected. So your management interface is up. For management interface, you can see this is the IP. Console interface is not connected as of now. Okay. For any kind of external DNS services, you are going to use gigabit Ethernet 0/0, and this interface is belongs to outside. And gigabit Ethernet 0/1, this is belongs to inside. And on this interface, gigabit 0/1, there is no IP as assigned, but this is connecting to your inside network. For any DNS capability, internet you would be accessing using gigabit 0/0. This is internet connected interface, which is connecting to IPS, sorry, ISP, WAN, or your router gateway. And from there, you can access the DNS services, NTP services, or Cisco Smart licenses. So Cisco Smart licenses, this is a licensing model. Right now, this firewall is not activated. So if you want to activate, you can activate using Cisco Smart licenses. So now it is showing that you have a 5 interface. Out of 5 interface, you have 3 interfaces are up. Okay. So that's what it is showing as of now. Any kind of routing is not created. Any kind of update, rule update, vulnerability database update, or system upgrade, you can configure from here. This is a licensing. So basically, licensing, this is saying that Cisco Smart license is supported. However, you have a evaluation period license. You don't have an actual license. So if you want to configure licenses, you can configure from here. Then we have a backup and restore. If you want to take the backup of your firewall, or you want to restore, you can restore from here. For troubleshooting, let's say you require to collect some data from the firewall. Okay. So you can collect from here. Request file to be created. Whatever the data you just want to collect, you can collect from here. We have a site-to-site VPN. There is nothing configured. Remote VPN. There is nothing configured. There is a flex configuration. Nothing is configured. Device administration for event logs, deployment history. You can configure from here. Apart from this, if you want to configure system related settings, for example, management access, log access, DS service, DSCP servers, etc., you can configure from here. So this is a device dashboard. Now, apart from device dashboard, you just want to configure policy. You just want to look the traffic. So you have a 3 options over here. From object, you can create the object. You can create network object, port object, security zone. This is the FDM feature, user, etc. You can create through this. Okay. If you want to create policy, you can create a policy here. By default, you have a policy over here, which is saying inside to outside, traffic would be blocked. So this is your policy. Okay. So what type of policy this is? This is access control policy. So you could have a multiple type of policy: SSL policy, identity policy, security intelligence, NAT policy, access control policy, intrusion policy. So you could have multiple policy. Right now we are at a access control policy. If you want to configure SSL decryption, you can configure SSL decryption. If you want to configure identity, you can configure identity. If you want to configure security intelligence, you can configure the security intelligence. So from this tab, you can create the policy rules. Okay, if you want to add any rule, you can click on this plus icon and you would be able to add rules. After this, we have a monitoring option. Through monitoring, you can monitor the system related traffic. So if you want to monitor system things, system events, etc., you can monitor through this one. That how much disk use, how much memory use, how much CPU is used, what all the event you have, you can monitor through this one, right? Similarly, if you want to monitor network overview, so network overview you can monitor from here. If you want to monitor users, applications, right now there is no traffic, that's why nothing is coming. Web application, URL category, access and SI rules, zone, destination, attackers, you can monitor through through this. Okay, so this is the dashboard for monitoring. If you want to see the events, so any events you can see from here, like connection, that what is the connection is going through, you can see from here. What all the intrusion is happening, file is being downloaded, malicious file, all these things you can see using this event option. And here you can see the active sessions. Okay, so right now admin has taken the session 11 minutes before, and you can see from here. If you want to terminate the session, you can click here and you can delete it. So your session is going to be terminated. So that's how that's all the options we have in the Firepower FDM. Now I'm going to tell you that how you are going to configure these things from scratch. So let's access FTD2 and try to see if on the FTD2 I'm able to log in or not. So let me just type admin as a username, password. So this is a fresh firewall FTD2 as of now. Okay. This firewall is not configured. So I would type admin and password admin 123 and then try to access. This firewall is accessible. So when you are accessing first time your firewall, you can access through console. You can type username as admin, admin123 as a password. Then it would be asking, the first screen would be end user license agreement, EULA. So you can press enter to display the license agreement. Keep going by pressing enter or space button. And you would be go at the end of this screen. Here you can see and accept the license agreement. So you can type yes over here as a license agreement and then press enter. Now it is asking to put the new password. I am putting the new password test @ 123 and confirm password test @ 123. If my password get matched, then it would be asking that, do you want to configure IP address? So you can say yes, I just want to configure IP address. Do you want to configure IP version 6? No. Do you want to configure IP address manual or DSCP? So you can give manual. And there you can configure the IP address. This is the default IP address of the management, but you can put your IP address, which is 10.0.0.2 in my case, because I am on FTD2. Subnet mask, use the default. Gateway, if you want to configure management gateway, So you can configure gateway as well. In our case, I'm going to configure 10.0.0.254. Give the fully qualified host name for this one. So I would say give the FTD2. Now it is asking the DNS server. So you can see this is the DNS server. IP is already configured. This is the DNS server IP. 1, 2. These are the DNS server IP. If I talk about the DNS server, this IP, this DNS server is from where it is putting this IP. Basically, this is the Cisco umbrella IP. This is a Cisco umbrella IP. Cisco umbrella is nothing but this is acting as a DNS protector. So what will happen if user is accessing any malicious DNS? Okay, so Cisco umbrella is going to suppress that DNS query. So here you can define your DNS or you can use a Cisco umbrella as a DNS server. So if you have your DNS system, you can put your IP. I don't have, so I can put 8.8.8 if I want 8, or better to put Cisco umbrella IP there. So now I have clicked this, and after 5 minutes we can access this firewall. Once everything is going to be configured, then we can access this firewall. Okay, now it is asking the question, do you want to manage this firewall locally? So if you want to manage using FDM, you can say yes. And if you want to manage this using FMC, you can say no. So when you say no, it would be asking for what? It would be asking for a FMC IP. But if you say yes, so it is not going to ask anything. So I press enter, which is by default yes. And it's not ask anything. So now I'm inside the firepower and I can show you whatever the configuration we have done. It would be over here. So if I show you show network, enter. So I should be able to see that management IP has been configured 10.0.0.2. Now, whether can I access my firepower using GUI? So go to this Windows machine, type the 10.0.0.2, and you should be able to see that you can access the firewall. Ten dot zero dot zero dot two. There you can see you can access the firewall. You can type username and password. So you can access the firewall. Right now you can see it is asking, do you have internet connection? If you have internet connection, click on next and do the device setup. Okay, so it is asking here itself. I would say yes, I am assuming that I have internet connection. Let's click on this next option. And it's trying to connect your firewall to the internet. When it connects to the firewall to the internet, it is going to reach to the DNS server, NTP server, and smart licensing server so that it would be able to face all those licenses. But the problem is we have only IP on the management interface. We don't have IP on Ethernet 0/0 or Ethernet 0/1. On Ethernet 0/1, I think they have one IP. They have one IP, default IP 192.168.45.1. It's trying to reach internet. As of now, internet is not there. So that's fine. You can see we have all these options. It is asking to set the time using NTP, and these are the NTP server. So if you want to set, you can set it. You can click on next. Then it is asking you to register the device with the Cisco Smart Software Manager if you have a license. I don't have, so I'm going to use a trial licenses over here. And by default, Cisco Firepower is going to provide 90 days trial license. It is similar as a ICE. Let's finish this. And you can see that your device is up and now it is ready to configure the interfaces and configure the policy. So here it is going to give the link that how you can configure the interfaces, right? I'm not going to configure anything. So now I have the options for the interfaces and I can see there are three interfaces. And by default on these interfaces, we don't have any IP. I just want to assign the IP. So I can assign the IP. For example, on gigabit 0/0, which is connecting to external interface, I can go and I can put IP. Instead of DSCP, I can say I just want to put the static IP. Let me put IP 100.0.0.2, subnet masks 255, or I can use /24 also. Save it. Same way I can go to gigabit Ethernet 1. By default on this interface, we have DSCP configure. So I just want to delete the DSCP first of all. This firewall is working as a DSCP server also. So I have deleted the DSCP and now I can assign the IP. For example, 192.168.2.2 and then I can click OK. So I have created all these stuff, but this things is going to be only applicable if I deploy the changes. So I have the option to deploy. So if I click over here, this option, this is going to be deployed. So as soon as I would click over here, deploy now. So my configuration is going to be pushed into the firewall. Okay, so you can see configuration has been pushed. right here. So if I try to ping my firewall internal interface, I should be able to ping. So let me go here on this system and try to ping firewall internal interface CMD ping 192.168.2.2, and you can see I'm able to ping. Also through this interface you can access your firewall. So https colon slash slash 192.168.2.2. That's it. What service is enabled on this interface. Okay, you cannot access because this interface is not allowing you HTTP access. Fine. So you can use the management as of now to access this. Now there is another option you would be able to see. If you want to access the CLI of this firewall, you don't need to do the putty or don't need to connect to the console. You can click over here and you can do the basic CLI. For example, earlier I run the command show networks, so I can run the same command over here. Right? So let's go and run the command show network. And you can see that we don't need to go to CLI and run those. We can run the command from here itself. You can maximize the console in this way, command console. So this is another good feature. If you want to access your firewall, you can access in this way. Right? So this is all for today's class. If you have any questions so far, please let me know. And from next class onwards, we are going to talk about these policies. Okay, going to create the object and we'll be testing all these policy by generating the traffic.